You were almost there. You could feel it, close enough to touch, the relationship, the opportunity, the version of your life you'd been building toward for years. And then, right at the edge of it, something happened. You said the thing that didn't need saying, made the choice that made no sense, pulled away from something good for a reason you couldn't fully explain. You stood in the wreckage of what you'd just torn down and asked the question you've asked 100 times before. Why do I do this? Why does some part of me reach out and end the exact thing I've been working toward, right when it's finally within reach? People around you have noticed. They've said it with frustration, with worry, sometimes with real anger. You're your own worst enemy. You ruin it right when it's working. And you've agreed with them, apologized, meant it, and then done it again because the explanation everyone offers, that you just need more confidence, doesn't actually explain what's happening. This doesn't strike when you feel worthless. It strikes when things are going well. When, by every visible measure, you're winning, which tells you something important. This isn't a failure problem. It's a success problem. And that's a completely different thing to solve. Start with what success actually does to a nervous system that isn't used to it. Genuine success produces a measurable physiological shift, a rise in positive affect, a drop in cortisol, a lift in dopamine, a swing toward parasympathetic calm. In a nervous system with no complicated history around good outcomes, that shift just feels like relief. The good thing arrives, the body recognizes it as good, and it settles. But in a nervous system that learned early, through instability, or being punished for standing out, that good things don't last, the success signal doesn't arrive alone. Underneath it runs a second signal, an alarm, quiet, persistent, and not irrational. Because it's built from real history, this won't last, something is coming. Brace. That alarm is your threat detection system doing exactly what it was trained to do, firing whenever the present resembles a past that used to precede loss. Psychologist Gay Hendricks named this the upper limit problem. His idea is that people carry an unconscious ceiling for how much positive experience they can sustain before the system intervenes to pull them back to a familiar baseline. Not a chosen ceiling, an automatic one. Rise above it, and the system generates behavior to bring you back down. Not because you want to suffer, but because unfamiliar positive states register as danger to a nervous system calibrated for less. The anxiety gets resolved the moment the good thing shrinks back to size. So the sabotage isn't self-destruction. It's self-regulation. Your nervous system is bringing you home. The problem is that home, by its definition, sits lower than what you actually deserve. Now, let's get specific, because this pattern shows up in at least 3 different shapes, and they come from different places. The first is approach. Avoidance conflict in achievement. Success brings benefits, but it also brings visibility, rising expectations, and the loss of a familiar identity, the one built around striving. While you're still working towards something, you're protected, you can't be judged for having it yet. Getting it removes that shield. For anyone whose history includes being held to standards and punished for falling short, visibility itself becomes the threat, not the outcome. The sabotage here is preemptive. You end it before it can be taken from you in public. The second is identity incongruence. Psychologist Claude Steele's research on self-integrity shows the self-concept works hard to stay consistent. It resists information that contradicts its core story. If you've absorbed, over years of small evidence, the belief that you're someone things don't work out for, real success doesn't just feel good. It feels wrong. It doesn't fit the model you've built of yourself. And the fastest way to resolve that mismatch isn't to update the model. It's to remove the success. The self-concept survives intact. The cost is invisible because the process isn't conscious. The third type is the hardest to say out loud because it requires real honesty, loyalty conflict. When your success would put real distance between you and the people who raised you, the people whose love you depended on, that success comes wrapped in the threat of separation. This shows up constantly in first-generation achievers, in people whose success would outpace their parents, in anyone raised somewhere that standing out got punished. The logic underneath is brutal in its simplicity. If I succeed, I leave them behind. If I succeed, I stop being someone they recognize. And belonging is older and more fundamental than ambition. When the two collide, belonging usually wins, not because you don't want to succeed, but because at some level, succeeding feels like walking out on the people you love. Therapist Harriet Lerner has written extensively about this exact pattern, describing cases where the approach of visible success triggers grief and guilt wildly out of proportion to the achievement. Because the achievement is being experienced underneath conscious awareness as a rupture in a relationship rather than a personal win. Here's what ties all three together. None of this means you don't deserve good things. None of it means success isn't meant for you. It means a part of you is trying to protect you from something it associates with success, based on exactly what your history taught it to expect. The ceiling isn't who you are. It's what you learned. Those are not the same thing, and the difference matters enormously. So what actually breaks the pattern? Start by learning the specific signature of your own upper limit. For most people, it shows up the same way each time. A spike of anxiety right after good news. An urge to introduce a problem into a situation that didn't have one. A thought dressed up as realism. This is too good. Don't get comfortable. Manage your expectations. That's actually sabotage wearing a disguise. Once you can name that signature, you get a window of maybe a second or two between the signal and the behavior it usually triggers. That's not much, but it's enough. You don't beat this with willpower. You beat it by recognizing the alarm for what it is: old data, not current information. Second, deliberately widen your tolerance for positive experience, in small doses, on purpose. Not by chasing bigger wins and white-knuckling your way through them, but by practicing staying present with small good things a little longer than feels comfortable. A conversation that goes well. A genuinely easy day. A flash of real pride. Your system will try to minimize it, find the flaw in it, hurry past it. Practice not following that pull for 30 seconds first, then a minute. The ceiling isn't fixed. It's a threshold that recalibrates with repeated, survived exposure to the good things it used to shut down. Third, get precise about what your particular sabotage is actually defending against. Not in the abstract. Specifically, when the system moves in to dismantle something good, ask what it's really afraid of. Being seen? The expectations that follow? An identity that no longer fits? The people you'd be leaving behind? Naming the exact fear is the only way to work at the level where the pattern actually lives, instead of just fighting its symptoms over and over. Here's what I want you to take from this. You are not someone who ruins things. You're someone whose nervous system built a ceiling in a context that no longer exists, to protect you from a cost that success used to carry and mostly doesn't anymore. That ceiling isn't permanent. It isn't your identity. It was constructed, which means it can be reconstructed, not through one decision, but through the slow, repeated proof that good things are allowed to stay. That success doesn't have to be followed by collapse. that you're allowed to arrive at the thing you've worked for and just remain standing in it. The life that keeps almost happening for you isn't a sign that it was never meant to be yours. It's a sign that something in you has been working overtime to protect you from a price it decided success would cost. Your job now is to show that system, one survived success at a time, that the price it's guarding against isn't the one you'll actually have to pay. Tell me in the comments, when you think about your own pattern, which of the three lands closest to home? The fear of visibility, the identity that doesn't fit, or the loyalty conflict? Knowing which one is yours is most of the way to understanding why you've been doing this. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.